MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, and we are going over the book by John Maxwell, Winning with People. So we're just going to take a minute here to tag a few people who wanted to be tagged in this. Hope everybody is having a happy Friday.
It is happy Friday. Happy birthday Friday.
Yeah, happy birthday Friday. It is my birthday.
So it is a happy birthday Friday.
Yep, it is a happy birthday Friday. So we're going to run around, go do some stuff.
Presents later. So hope everything's going well in this weird time that we're going through. Jim Bailey, Francis is here. Hello, hello. We're going over kind of a cool book, really starting today, Winning with People. The notes on the last book, Be Obsessed, Be Average, will go out today to the list. So for the people who are on that list or want to be on that list, we'll put up a link. We just need a name and an email, basically, and then it fires out the list or the notes that I have, because there's probably about 35 books now that I've gone through that I've done this with, maybe more, that I take notes, like my Cliff Notes, and they're now hashtagged with quotes and who said it and some of the stories, but it's kind of a cool reference point. I email them to myself. That way I always have access to them, but I can get those over to you if you want them. So, here we go.
Thank you, Jim.
What's going on?
All right, so we're going to get started. So yesterday was an introduction to this book, and today we're going to talk about the lens principle. So who you are determines how you're going to see others. So a good question to ask yourself is, what is your perception of others? And then who you are determines what you're going to see. What people see is influenced by who they are. And people in the same room may look at the same things, but see everything totally different. So, and sometimes that has a lot to do with personality too. If you've ever gone through the DISC personality profiling, people will view things very differently based on their personalities. Who you are determines how you see others. So the way people see others is a reflection of themselves. If you are a trusting person, you're going to be see others as trustworthy. If you are a critical person, you will see others as critical. And your personality comes through when you talk about others and interact with them. Someone who doesn't know you would be able to tell a lot about who you are based on simple observations. So this is something that you really have to look at yourself when you're doing this. Like, how am I portraying myself to other people? At one point, I was in high school, like early on in high school, I was high on life, just happy as can be. Nothing could tear me down. And I was just a happy person, and I viewed other people as happy and trustworthy, and I never had an issue until something happened with some circumstances, and there was an experience that me and my family went through, and my whole perception changed. I got very bitter, and I started to really hate people. And I got bitter with myself too. I wasn't too happy with who I was anymore. And it came out every time I was around people. And it was aggression, anger. I was rude. And since I had such a bad, since I didn't think very highly of other people, since I didn't think very highly of myself, it came out when I started talking to other people. And it wasn't until I went off to college where I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I don't like people. And I was like, you know what I need to do? I'm like, I need to take a little time to myself. I need to get away from everyone. And I need to work on myself. Because I'm like, I'm not happy with who I am and where I'm at. So I need and I can't control everybody else, but I can control me. But it took that decision of, I'm not happy where I'm at, and making the decision to change for me to change me and the circumstances around me. And then later, once I changed all that, I started attracting the right people, because who you are is you don't attract who you want, you attract who you are. So the first change you have to start with is you. So who you are determines how you will view life. So the only way to change how you view life is to change who you are on the inside, which is something I already went over. We all have that personal frame of reference that consists of our attitudes. Excuse me. Ooh, allergy season, gotta love it. So, anywho, we all have personal frame of reference that consists of our attitudes, assumptions, and expectations concerning ourselves, other people, and in life. These factors determine whether we're optimistic or pessimistic, cheerful or gloomy, trustworthy or suspicious, friendly or reserved, brave or timid. And they color not only how we see life, but also how we let people treat us. So people are going to treat you how you treat them, if you have ever heard that before. So this is a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt: "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And then Phil McGraw, you teach people how to treat you. And what you teach comes from how you see life, and how you see life comes from who you are. So there are 5 things that determine who you are, and Jeff has actually gone through this multiple times in different classes that we've done, our seminars. So Jeff, I'm actually going to have you take over and go over the 5 things. Gotta bring up your notes first.
They keep getting lost.
So we email our notes to ourselves after we read each book. We take all the notes and email them to ourselves, so that way if we ever have to go back and reference something, we can type it into our phone and it just pops it up. We also get a lot of emails.
So kind of my take on this, the lens principle, who we are determines how we see others. So, there's a bunch of different things that you personally are going to go through. And your vantage point, kind of your reference point to how things happened, is how you're viewing what other people are doing, which is both good and bad. The question I must ask myself is, what is my perception of others? You cannot separate your identity from your perspective. Tom, what's up, sir? Oh, where'd it go? Back. Okay. So who you are determines what you see, how you see others, and your personality comes through when talking and interacting with them. Who you are determines your view. Who you are determines what you do. So there are 5 basic things that determine who we are. Number 1, genetics. Genetics. When it comes to character traits or character issues, work on your weaknesses. When it comes to talents, go with your strengths. So John kind of talks about this in many of his books. He's like, it's an 80-20 kind of thing, the Pareto principle. He goes, you really want to spend 80% of the time working on your strengths, knowing what your strengths are. Most people just never figure out what their strengths are, what they're really, really good at, what they're not, and then what their weaknesses are. Most people focus on their weaknesses, but when I say focus on them, they kind of wrap the drama around them, but they don't actually figure out what's going on to fix it. 2 is self-image. A person with a negative self-image will expect the worst, damage relationships, find others who are similarly negative. The same for positive. We tend to feel most comfortable and at home with people whose self-esteem resembles our own, which is kind of scary, right? That's why they say the 5 people you hang out with have the biggest influence. So you kind of have to look at that. Also, a person with a negative self-image, so you kind of have to be careful. If you always think somebody has it out for you, what do you have out for other people? You know what I mean? It's kind of like a mirror. 3, experiences in life. People respond to what they are prepared to believe, and what prepares them for what they believe is their own experience. So for instance, I learned this a long time ago. I remember there was an audio that I listened to of a guy that said, look, if you grew up in a household where the dog bites people every time, somebody comes in and you've been bitten by the dog, anytime you see a dog of any type and you hear a bark of any type, you're always going to assume that dog's going to bite you. And I think the same is true as people get conditioned that when people get maybe close or people get whatever, that that's how they're going to react. And what happens is you start reacting based on not what they're doing, not based on where they're going, not based on how they're feeling. You're reacting based on that preconditioning of maybe another relationship that you've been in. This is why you watch people destroy their own relationships and there was nothing wrong with that person. There was nothing wrong with that relationship. It was you. And that's why we have to work harder on ourselves than on anything else. 4, attitude and choices about those experiences. I believe attitude is the second most important decision anybody can make. The most important, John thinks, is your faith. Your attitude will basically make you happy or make you unhappy. Attitude is basically how we feel about what we're doing. It is self-esteem, it is self-worth, but your attitude is kind of like your internal thermometer, maybe. Internal thermometer of how you view everything. A good attitude means kind of good self-worth. I'll figure it out no matter what. There's always a way if I'm committed. But some people, my attitude, that was the big thing growing up, is they always say, well, your attitude's terrible, your attitude's this, your attitude's... And I had a negative, pessimistic attitude towards basically everything because I grew up in an environment that wasn't super positive all the time. Number 5 is the friends. The most important thing you'll ever do is choose who you hang out with. The people who are closest to you, especially includes your spouse, are going to shape who you are. The people you choose to spend your time with are going to change you, either for the better or for the worse. The difference between who you are today and who you'll be in 5 years is basically 2 things. The books you're reading, the people you hang out with. Charlie Tremendous Jones actually said that. How do you feel about people in general? That's a good question to ask. How do you feel about people in general? Are people, a sense of, are relationships a good thing or are relationships a bad thing? Do you see them as a negative thing? Do you see people trying to, take you out or put you in weird situations or get something from it? Is it always a taking situation or is it a giving situation? What do you think your normal attitude is on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, when times are good, most people are okay. What really, really brings out everything is when times are bad. Like what's been going on right now, the lockdown and this, that, and the other thing. I've people who are on my Facebook, I've basically unfollowed, not unfriended, but unfollowed a ton of them just because of negativity. This is bad, that's bad, I can't believe, this is what's wrong, everything's what's wrong with the world. They don't have a solution at all. And they're not making it any better. So you kind of have to ask yourself, where am I on a scale of 1 to 10 and how do you improve that? What are the best experiences and what are the worst experiences I've had growing up? So kind of analyzing how you grew up, and the personality chart's really good. Like who was your mom, who was your dad, or who was your guardian? Because some people grew up, with grandparents and aunts and uncles and everything because of different circumstances. So who were your guardians growing up? Also, who were the other members of the family? Brothers, sisters, cousins. Who else was living there? Niece, nephew. Who basically influenced you and what were their personalities and how did they treat people? How did they look at the world? Because obviously that's going to influence you. List all the books that you've read in the past 5 years. Well, I take notes on them, so I've got that list. List 5 people that you've spent the most time with in the last 5 years. That's a good evaluation. Then you go, okay, how do I bring a couple more people into the mix to hang out with? The list the best qualities a person can have, and then let's make a plan to actually achieve them. So this first lens principle is really breaking down who you are: strengths, weaknesses, personality, attitude, good, bad. And kind of what you want to do is you want to build the best version of yourself. Everybody's different. Everybody has unique qualities. Everybody's good at something. Everybody has, some quality about them that, basically overrides everybody else's quality of the same. So you kind of have to focus on what are you good at and then focus your energy on making that better and better and better, because certain people have certain interests. There's a really cool book called 7 Kinds of Genius. Seven Kinds of Genius, and it talks about, some people are, emotionally connected, and they're just emotions. They're really good at that, feeling based people. Some people are music based. Some people are numbers based. Some people are, athletically gifted. So you kind of have to look, what are you gifted at? And then focus on that and work with that. There's a really, that book that I was talking about is really good for kids, because what you're doing is you're identifying what they're really good at and telling them they have an amazing quality, and then building upon that. It doesn't mean you can't have more than one, but normally you have a predominant one. So that's what I have for today on winning with people is, first of all, understand you, which is probably the hardest person to understand.
All right, well, that is it for today. Also, if you guys would like to follow us on YouTube, you could go ahead and do that by searching MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, and you could go subscribe there. That way, if you'd like to go back to any notes, you can, or any videos, you could go back to any of the videos and rewatch some of these. And we will see you guys on Monday.